"Sir, my brother is sick, can you help us?" The little girl said the CEO take him to the hospital. The conference room glass shattered under Garrett's fist. Blood dripped onto the mahogany table where 42 board members sat frozen, mouths open like fish gasping for air. Donovan Pierce didn't flinch. His fingers remained steepled beneath his chin, gray eyes cold as January steel. Garrett's face had gone purple, veins bulging at his temples like twisted ropes ready to snap. "You stole from this company." Garrett's voice cracked the silence like a whip. $17 million funneled into offshore accounts. Charity fraud. I have the evidence right here. Papers scattered across the table, bank statements, forged signatures, dates and numbers that looked damning if you didn't know better. The board shifted in their leather chairs, expensive suits rustling like dead leaves. Some leaned forward. Others reached for their phones. Donovan watched it all play out like a movie he'd already seen. "Are you finished?" Donovan's voice cut through the chaos, soft as a blade sliding between ribs. "Hi viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." Garrett's smile stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. "The board will vote. Today. Right now. You're done, brother." Donovan stood. 6 feet tall. Shoulders that still filled his suit like he lifted steel instead of pens. He reached into his briefcase with movement so deliberate the room held its breath. When his hand emerged, he held a small black recording device. Thumb on the play button. The air went tight. Garrett's voice crackled through the speakers. "Transfer another $200,000 to the Cayman account. Make sure it looks like operating costs." Donovan's too busy playing daddy to some street kids to notice. The color drained from Garrett's face like water from a broken dam. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. But Donovan never pressed pause. Never gloated. Because at that exact moment, the double doors exploded inward. A little girl stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her brown cheeks, school uniform twisted and stained. Her chest heaved with sobs that shook her entire body. "Mr. Don." Iris's voice pierced the room like a siren. Felix collapsed. "At school. He's not waking up. Please. You have to come now." 42 executives stared. Garrett's mouth hung open, forgotten evidence still clutched in his bleeding hand. The recording kept playing, damning words filling the silence. Donovan looked at his crumbling empire. At his brother's exposed treachery. At 15 years of building something that would survive him. Then he looked at Iris. He closed his briefcase with a soft click that sounded like a door shutting on everything he'd ever built. His feet moved toward the little girl before his brain caught up. Security guards stepped aside. Board members half rose from their seats, confused sounds dying in their throats. "Donovan." The board chairman's voice chased him. "We need you here. This isn't finished." Donovan scooped Iris into his arms. Her small body trembled against his chest, hot tears soaking through his $2,000 shirt. She smelled like chalk and fear and strawberry shampoo. He didn't look back at the boardroom. Didn't acknowledge Garrett's strangled protest. Didn't care that he was walking away from the biggest moment of professional vindication in his life. Because none of it mattered if Felix wasn't breathing. 6 months earlier, rain hammered the pavement outside Meridian Tower like bullets from a machine gun. November had teeth that year, wind sharp enough to cut skin, cold that seeped through concrete and steel and bone. Donovan's driver had called in sick with the flu, leaving him to walk 3 blocks to his private garage for the first time in 4 years. His shoes cost more than most people's monthly rent. Each step splashed through puddles that reflected broken streetlights and neon pharmacy signs. The streets were empty. Smart people had gone home hours ago. Donovan Pierce was 53 years old and hadn't felt warm in 20 years. Not since the accident. Not since Sarah and the baby he'd never meet had burned in a crash on Highway 84. Work had filled the hole where his heart used to live. Numbers and deals and hostile takeovers didn't ask for love. Didn't leave. Didn't die screaming. He turned the corner past Murray's Pharmacy, where the awning hung broken on one side, offering no shelter from the storm. That's when he heard it, small, trembling, desperate. "Sir, please. My brother is sick. Can you help us?" Donovan stopped. Water ran down his face, blurring his vision. He blinked it away. Standing under the useless awning, soaked to the skin, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her clothes hung off her frame like they belonged to someone twice her size. Her shoes had holes where her toes poked through, pale from cold. In her arms, she held a bundle wrapped in a blanket so thin Donovan could see through it. The bundle was a boy. Maybe 4 years old. His lips had gone blue. His skin looked gray in the streetlight. He wasn't crying. That was worse. Donovan's first instinct was the same one that had kept him alive in business for 30 years. Walk away. Don't get involved. The city was full of scams and sob stories and people who'd take your wallet while thanking you for your kindness. His second instinct was to call someone. Police. Social services. Someone whose job was caring. But when the little girl looked up at him with eyes so desperate they hurt to see, something cracked inside his chest. Something he thought had died in that car wreck. Donovan knelt in the puddle. Water soaked through his pants, ruining fabric that cost $300 a yard. His hand reached out, touched the boy's forehead. Heat radiated from the child's skin like a furnace about to explode. This wasn't a con. This was a kid dying on a street corner while the world walked by. "Where's your mother?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. The girl's lip quivered. "Mama's at work. She has 2 jobs. She doesn't know Felix got this sick. I tried to help him, but he keeps getting hotter and I didn't want to bother her because she's so tired all the time and he did." Donovan didn't wait for the rest. He scooped Felix into his arms. The boy's body limp and burning against his chest. "Get in the car. Now." His Bentley was half a block away. He ran. The girl, Iris, scrambled after him on legs that should have been too tired to move. Donovan's hands shook as he unlocked the door, laid Felix across the leather back seat, cranked the heat to maximum. The boy's breathing came in short, shallow gasps. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Donovan's tires screamed as he pulled into traffic. Red lights became suggestions. Stop signs were invisible. His phone, voice activated, dialed Street Augustine's directly. "This is Donovan Pierce. I'm bringing in a child with critical fever. Pneumonia suspected. Have a team ready in 4 minutes or I'll buy your hospital and fire everyone." The voice on the other end stammered something about protocols. Donovan ended the call. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Iris sat clutching her brother's hand, lips moving in what looked like prayer. Felix's chest barely moved. 3 minutes and 40 seconds later, Donovan's car screeched into the emergency bay. He kicked his door open, had Felix in his arms before the engine stopped. Nurses and doctors scattered, then swarmed when they recognized him. The Ice King of Commerce didn't carry dying children through their lobby every day. "Pneumonia," Donovan barked. "Severe fever. Approximately 4 years old. He needs IV antibiotics, cooling measures, and oxygen now." They moved. A stretcher appeared. Hands reached for Felix. Iris tried to follow but a nurse held her back gently. The little girl screamed her brother's name as the medical team disappeared through double doors. Donovan stood in the middle of the lobby, soaked and shaking, watching those doors swing shut. A doctor he recognized, Martinez, emerged 10 minutes later. Her face was unreadable. Donovan's chest went tight. "We've got him stabilized," Martinez said. "But another hour, maybe less, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Donovan's knees almost gave out. He didn't let them. Iris sat in the waiting room, wrapped in a blanket 3 times too big, hands curled around hot chocolate a nurse had brought. Her eyes were red but she'd stopped crying. Shock did that sometimes, made everything go quiet inside. Donovan lowered himself into the plastic chair beside her. It creaked under his weight. Hospital smell, antiseptic and fear, filled his nose. He'd been in hospitals before, hated them then, hated them now. "What's your mother's name?" he asked. "Sienna Calloway." Iris's voice came out small. "She works at Rosie's Diner on 5th during the day. At night she cleans offices downtown. She works real hard but we don't have much and Felix gets sick sometimes in Edo." "Where does she clean?" Iris rattled off an address. Donovan pulled out his phone, made 3 calls. The first was to his assistant. The second was to building security at the address Iris gave. The third was to his lawyer for reasons he didn't examine too closely. 28 minutes later, Sienna Calloway burst through the emergency room doors like a hurricane made flesh. She was 32 but looked 40. Skin stretched tight over delicate bones. Hair pulled back in a bun that had come half undone. Her diner uniform still had ketchup stains on the apron. Mascara ran down her face in black rivers. "Where is he? Where's my baby?" A nurse intercepted her. Spoke in low tones. Pointed toward the pediatric wing. Sienna ran. Iris scrambled after her mother. Donovan followed at a distance, hands in his pockets, watching through the observation window as Sienna collapsed beside Felix's bed. The boy was asleep, IV in his arm, oxygen tube under his nose, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Sienna's sobs shook her whole body. She pressed her face against Felix's small hand, shoulders heaving with relief and terror and guilt all mixed together. Iris climbed onto the bed beside her brother, careful of the wires, and wrapped her arms around them both. Donovan watched through the glass. Something twisted in his chest. Something that felt like pain and longing and a grief so old it had grown roots. When Sienna finally came out, her eyes were swollen but dry. She looked at Donovan like she was seeing a ghost. "The nurses said you brought them in. That you saved his life." Donovan nodded once. "I don't know how to repay you." Her voice cracked. "The hospital bills alone will, Therese. Already handled." The words came out before he thought them through. "The bills are paid. All of them." Sienna's knees buckled. She caught herself on the wall. "I can't accept that. I can't possibly." "You can. You will." Donovan's voice left no room for argument. He pulled a business card from his wallet, wrote a number on the back. "This is my personal line. If Felix needs anything, you call. Understood?" She stared at the card like it might bite her. Then at him. "Why are you doing this?" Donovan didn't have an answer. Or he did. But it lived too deep to reach with words. He turned toward the elevator instead. 3 weeks passed. Felix recovered under the best pediatric care money could buy. Donovan told himself he was just following up on an investment. Making sure the kid didn't relapse. That's all. But he kept finding reasons to stop by the tiny apartment where Sienna and her children lived, kept noticing things. The heater that didn't work. The mold in the bathroom. The refrigerator that held more ketchup packets than actual food. He made calls. Pulled strings. Nothing obvious. Nothing that looked like charity. Sienna got offered a position at Pierce Industries. Administrative assistant in human resources. Better pay. Benefits. Health insurance that actually covered things. She came to his office, card clutched in her hand, tears in her eyes. "Did you do this?" Donovan looked up from his computer. "They needed someone. You needed work. Simple equation. This isn't simple." She set the card on his desk. "You're changing our lives and I don't understand why." He didn't answer. Didn't know how to explain that watching Felix laugh made something in his chest remember how to beat. That Iris's gap-toothed smile was the first thing in 20 years that made him feel human instead of hollow. Sienna took the job. Started 2 weeks later. Donovan watched from his office as she learned the systems, made friends with the other assistants. Slowly stopped looking like she was waiting for the floor to drop out beneath her. Felix came to visit one afternoon. Sienna's childcare had fallen through. She'd apologized 6 times before Donovan waved her off, told her to bring the boy to work. Felix spent 2 hours in Donovan's office, drawing pictures with expensive markers, asking questions about everything he saw. "What's this building made of?" Felix held up a pen like it was treasure. "Steel and concrete." Donovan found himself smiling. "And a lot of stubborn determination. Like my mama." Felix nodded seriously. "She's super strong." "Yeah. She is." When Sienna came to collect Felix at the end of the day, she found them both on the floor, building something elaborate with paperclips and sticky notes. Donovan couldn't remember the last time he'd sat on a floor. Couldn't remember the last time work had felt less important than a moment. That night, Iris gave him a drawing. It was crude. Done in crayon. Showing 3 stick figures holding hands. 1 tall. 2 small. She'd labeled them carefully in wobbly letters. Mr. Don, Iris, Felix. Donovan stared at that picture for longer than he cared to admit. Put it in his briefcase. Kept it there. Looked at it sometimes when the numbers stopped making sense and the world felt cold again. He told himself this was temporary. That he was just helping until they got on their feet. That he wasn't getting attached to a family that wasn't his and never would be. But in the dark of his penthouse, surrounded by expensive things that meant nothing, Donovan Pierce admitted the truth he'd been running from. These people had cracked something open inside him, something he'd sealed shut the day Sarah died. And he didn't know if that was a gift or the cruelest thing that had ever happened to him. What he didn't know was that someone had been watching every kind gesture, every smile, every moment of weakness, someone who saw opportunity and softness. Someone who'd been waiting 15 years for Donovan to finally make a mistake. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this story. Share your thoughts in the comments below and inspire others with your words. More stories that move the soul are coming soon. Garrett Pierce pressed his ear against his brother's office door, phone recording everything happening inside. Laughter drifted through the wood. Children's laughter. The sound made his stomach turn with disgust and something sharper, opportunity. For 48 years, Garrett had lived in Donovan's shadow. Same last name, different mothers. Completely different lives. Their father had given Donovan the company, the respect, the legacy. Given Garrett a VP title and a pat on the head like a dog begging for scraps. Every board meeting. Every shareholder call. Every business magazine article. It was always Donovan Pierce. The genius. The titan. The man who turned steel into gold. Garrett had an MBA from Harvard. Donovan had a degree from a state school and instincts that shouldn't have worked but did. It wasn't fair. Had never been fair. But now, finally, the perfect storm was forming. Garrett scrolled through the photos on his phone. Donovan carrying Felix through the hospital doors. Donovan having lunch with Sienna in the company cafeteria. Donovan with Iris's crayon drawing tucked in his briefcase. Each image was ammunition. Each moment of weakness was a nail in his brother's coffin. He forwarded the photos to 3 board members. The ones who'd been whispering about Donovan's age. About succession planning. About whether the Ice King still had the edge that built Pierce Industries. The ones who counted money instead of vision. The ones Garrett had been cultivating for 5 years. His phone buzzed. A text from Bernard Ashford, the board's oldest member. Is he using company resources for this woman and her children? Garrett smiled. He'd been skimming money from Pierce Industries for 7 years. $2 million here, $3 million there. Hidden in operating costs and vendor contracts and consultant fees that led to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Enough to disappear if things went wrong. Enough to start his own empire when he finally pushed Donovan out. But the beauty of the plan was how simple it was. He didn't need to prove Donovan was stealing. He just needed to make people doubt. Make them wonder if the legendary Donovan Pierce had finally gone soft. If personal feelings were clouding business judgment. If maybe, just maybe, it was time for new leadership. Garrett typed back. I'm looking into it. The amounts are concerning. 3 more texts came in rapid succession. Questions. Concerns. Fear wrapped in corporate speak. Garrett fed each one carefully crafted lies mixed with truth. Donovan had paid Felix's medical bills. That was fact. Donovan had gotten Sienna a job. Also fact. The spin was where magic happened. Make it look like favoritism. Like resources misused. Like a man losing his grip. He scheduled an emergency audit. Made sure the forensic accountant was someone he'd already paid off. Someone who'd find exactly what Garrett needed him to find. Numbers that looked suspicious if you didn't dig too deep. Patterns that suggested impropriety if you squinted just right. The door opened. Garrett jumped back, nearly dropping his phone. Felix ran out first, laughing, Iris chasing him down the hallway. Sienna followed, apologizing to Donovan about the noise. Donovan stood in his doorway. Tie loosened. Actually smiling. Kids are supposed to make noise. Donovan said. Means they're alive. The brothers locked eyes. Garrett's smile was all teeth. No warmth. Didn't know we were running a daycare now. Didn't know you cared how I spent my time. Donovan's voice went cold. The Ice King sliding back into place. Garrett shrugged, walked away. But his mind was already 3 moves ahead. The audit would take 2 weeks. The board meeting was scheduled for the end of the month. By Christmas, Donovan would be out, and Garrett would finally have everything he'd been owed since birth. He just needed his brother to keep being weak. Keep caring about people who didn't matter. Keep forgetting that in business, love was a liability and family was just another word for competition. Donovan sat in his penthouse, surrounded by documents that told a story Garrett thought was hidden. Bank transfers. Shell company registrations. Emails between his brother and vendors who didn't exist. He'd known for 6 months. Had been building the case slowly, methodically, the way you dismantled a bomb. His head of security, a former FBI agent named Marcus Webb, had flagged the first irregularity 14 months ago. A payment to a consulting firm that had no website, no employees, no physical address. Donovan had told Marcus to watch, not act. To follow the thread and see where it led. It led exactly where he expected. To Garrett's greed. To his brother's desperation. To a betrayal that would have hurt if Donovan had any expectations left to shatter. He didn't. What surprised him was how little he cared. A year ago, this discovery would have consumed him. Would have demanded immediate action, public destruction, the kind of corporate execution that made headlines and ruined lives. But tonight, with Felix's get well card on his desk and Iris's drawing in his briefcase, the whole thing felt small. Sad. Pathetic. His phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. Felix wants to know if you'll come to his school play next week. He's playing a tree. Very important role, apparently. Donovan smiled despite himself. Typed back. What day? The response came immediately. Thursday at 2 p.m. You don't have to. I know you're busy. I'll be there. He set the phone down, looked at the evidence spread across his coffee table. Justice could wait. Had waited this long already. 1 more week wouldn't matter. But missing Felix's first school play? That was time he'd never get back. Thursday came. Donovan left the office at 1:30. Ignoring his assistant's confused look. The elementary school was 40 minutes across town. In a neighborhood where his car cost more than most houses. He parked between a rusted Honda and a van held together with duct tape and prayer. The auditorium smelled like floor wax and poster paint. Folding chairs squeaked under parents with cameras. Donovan found a seat in the back, feeling overdressed in his suit, feeling out of place in a way that should have been uncomfortable but wasn't. The lights dimmed. Kids filed onto stage wearing costumes made from cardboard and craft store glitter. Felix stood stage left. Arms extended. Brown face serious with concentration as he embodied his tree role with complete commitment. Iris sat in the front row, waving at her brother hard enough to fall out of her seat. Donovan watched the whole thing. Every off-key song. Every forgotten line. Every moment of chaotic elementary school theater magic. And something in his chest, that thing that had cracked open the night he met Iris in the rain, broke completely. After the play, Felix ran to him. Tree costume shedding leaves everywhere. "Did you see me? I didn't move at all. Not even when Tommy forgot his line. You were perfect." Donovan knelt, eye level with the boy. "Best tree I've ever seen." Sienna approached, camera in hand, smiling in a way that made her look young again. "Thank you for coming." It meant the world to him. "Meant something to me too," Donovan admitted. He didn't see Garrett's hired investigator in the parking lot. Camera clicking away. Didn't know those photos would be on the board members' desks by morning. Didn't know his brother had already scheduled the emergency meeting. Didn't know the trap was closing. Not yet. The boardroom felt like a courtroom. 42 executives sat in judgment, faces carefully blank, hands folded on the table like they were about to pray. Garrett stood at the head. Laptop connected to the projector. Smile sharp enough to cut glass. Donovan entered exactly on time. He took his seat at the opposite end, briefcase beside him, expression giving nothing away. The air between the brothers crackled with tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Bernard Ashford cleared his throat. This meeting was called to address serious concerns regarding potential misuse of company resources and conflicts of interest. "Let's not dance around it," Garrett interrupted. "My brother has been using Pierce Industries funds for personal charity work. $17 million over 6 months, funneled through dummy accounts to support a woman and her children." Murmurs rippled around the table. Donovan didn't move. Garrett clicked to the first slide. Bank statements filled the screen, numbers highlighted in red. These transfers all lead back to accounts connected to Sienna Calloway, a woman Donovan hired without proper vetting, gave an inflated salary, and has been personally involved with. The next slide showed photos. Donovan and Felix at the hospital. Donovan and Sienna having lunch. Donovan at the school play. Each image designed to suggest impropriety, to make kindness look like corruption. "This isn't business," Garrett's voice rose, righteous and rehearsed. "This is a man who's lost his focus. Who's prioritizing his personal feelings over his fiduciary duty to this company and its shareholders." More murmurs. Louder now. Some board members nodding. Others looking at Donovan with disappointment or pity or the cold calculation of people already choosing sides. Garrett's laptop showed one final slide. A motion, already drafted, to remove Donovan as CEO effective immediately, pending a full investigation. "The evidence is clear. Donovan Pierce has betrayed this company. I move that we vote now." Silence fell like a guillotine blade. Every eye turned to Donovan. Waiting for rage. For defense. For the Ice King to freeze them all with fury. Instead, Donovan smiled. Small. Sad. Almost gentle. "Are you finished?" His voice was quiet. Garrett's triumph flickered. Something in his brother's calm made his stomach twist. "The evidence speaks for itself." "Does it?" Donovan reached into his briefcase. Pulled out a black recording device. Set it on the table with a soft click that sounded like a door closing. "Because I have some evidence too." He pressed play. Garrett's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Damning beyond redemption. Transfer another $200,000 to the Cayman account. Make sure it looks like operating costs." Donovan's too busy playing daddy to some street kids to notice. The color drained from Garrett's face like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened. No words came out, but Donovan wasn't done. He pulled out folders. Thick ones, started sliding them across the table. Shell company registrations in Garrett's name, wire transfers going back 7 years. Emails with vendors who don't exist. A total of $43 million stolen from this company by the man currently accusing me of theft. Papers rustled as board members grabbed folders. Flipped through pages. Faces going from shock to furious in seconds. Bernard Ashford stood so fast his chair fell over. "Security. Get security up here now." Garrett backed toward the door. "This is fabricated. He's lying, he's trying to." The FBI has copies, Donovan said calmly. So does the SEC. I filed the reports this morning. That's when the double doors exploded inward. Every head turned. Iris stood in the doorway. School uniform twisted. Face streaked with tears. Chest heaving with sobs that shook her whole small body. Mr. Don, her voice cut through everything. Felix collapsed at school. The nurse called an ambulance, but he's not waking up and Mama's not answering her phone, and I didn't know what else to do. 42 executives froze. Garrett stood with his back against the wall, forgotten. The recording device kept playing, listing crimes in his own voice. Security guards appeared in the doorway behind Iris. The whole room held its breath, waiting to see what Donovan would do. He looked at the evidence of his brother's betrayal spread across the table. At 15 years of work about to be vindicated, at the moment every wronged person dreams of, when justice finally arrives and everyone sees the truth. Then he looked at Iris. Donovan stood. The movement was slow, deliberate, final. His hands closed his briefcase with a click that sounded like thunder in the silent room. He didn't look at Garrett, didn't acknowledge the board's confusion, didn't care that he was walking away from the single most important moment of professional triumph in his entire life. He walked toward Iris. Donovan. Bernard Ashford's voice cracked. We need you here. This situation requires. Handle it. Donovan didn't break stride. You have all the evidence. The FBI is already involved. My lawyer has instructions. Do what needs to be done. You can't just leave. Garrett found his voice finally, shrill and desperate. This company is your life. Everything you've built. H.E.O. Donovan stopped in the doorway. Turned. Looked at his brother for what he knew would be the last time. That was the problem. He scooped Iris into his arms. She buried her face in his neck. Hot tears soaking his collar. Her whole body shook. He won't wake up, Mr. Don. They put him in the ambulance and he just wouldn't wake up. Which hospital? Donovan was already moving, long strides eating up the hallway toward the elevator. Street Augustine's. The same hospital where this all started. Full circle. Always full circle. Donovan's car was still running when he reached it, keys left with security. He broke every traffic law invented. Phone on speaker with the hospital. Demanding updates in a voice that made nurses scramble and doctors move faster. Iris sat in the passenger seat. Small hands gripping the armrest. Eyes fixed on the road like she could make them arrive sooner through sheer will. He was fine this morning, she whispered. He ate breakfast. He laughed. He was fine. Kids get sick fast, Donovan said, more to himself than her. Doesn't mean it's serious, doesn't mean. He cut himself off. Making promises he couldn't keep helped no one. Street Augustine's emergency entrance came into view. Donovan didn't park, just stopped in the ambulance bay and ran. Iris kept pace beside him somehow, legs pumping double time to match his stride. The sliding doors opened. The same lobby where he'd stood 6 months ago. Soaked and shaking, watching those double doors swing shut on Felix's first brush with death. Dr. Martinez met them halfway. Her face was calm, professional, telling him nothing, he's stable. It was a seizure brought on by a fever spike. We're running tests now, but preliminary looks like a virus, nothing related to the pneumonia. He's awake and asking for his sister. Donovan's knees went weak. He caught himself on the wall. Iris burst into tears again. These ones relief instead of terror. Martinez led them back. Felix lay in a hospital bed that made him look even smaller, IV in his arm again, but his eyes were open and clear. When he saw Iris, his face split into a grin. I got to ride in an ambulance. It was so cool. Iris climbed onto the bed, hugged her brother hard enough to make the monitors beep. Donovan stood in the doorway, watching them, chest tight with emotions he'd forgotten he could feel, fear and relief and something bigger than both. Something that felt like purpose. His phone buzzed. 15 texts. 20 emails. All marked urgent. The board. His lawyers. The media already getting wind of the story. Garrett's arrest. The company in chaos. His empire burning while he stood in a hospital room watching two kids hold each other. He turned his phone off. Slid it into his pocket. The world could wait. This couldn't. Sienna arrived 30 minutes later. Still in her work clothes. Running so fast she almost fell. When she saw Felix awake and Iris beside him, she collapsed into Donovan's arms without meaning to, sobs shaking her whole frame. He held her steady. One hand on her back. And realized this was the first time he'd held another person in 20 years. Since Sarah. Since the accident. Since he'd learned that loving people meant risking the kind of pain that never stopped. Thank you. Sienna whispered against his chest. Thank you for being here. For always being here. Donovan looked over her head at Felix and Iris, both watching him with trust so complete it hurt. He thought about the boardroom, about Garrett being led away in handcuffs, about Pierce Industries and the legacy he'd spent 30 years building, about power and money and success and all the things he thought mattered. Then he thought about a little girl in the rain, asking for help, about a drawing in his briefcase, about a school play where he'd been the only one in a suit, about moments that couldn't be bought or negotiated or won through strategy, about being needed in a way that had nothing to do with what he could provide and everything to do with who he chose to be. "I need to tell you all something," Donovan said quietly. 3 faces turned to him. Waiting. Trusting. Completely unaware that in the next 60 seconds, everything was about to change. The hospital released Felix that evening with instructions and medication and warnings about fever management. Donovan drove them home to the apartment, helped Sienna get Felix settled, tucked Iris in when she fell asleep in her clothes. Then he and Sienna sat at her tiny kitchen table, drinking coffee that was more water than anything else, and he told her everything: the company, the betrayal, the choice he'd made, the choice he was about to make. 3 days later, Donovan Pierce stood before the Pierce Industries board and resigned as CEO, not fired, not forced out. His choice. The room erupted in protests and questions and confusion, but his decision was final. He recommended his COO, a woman named Patricia Chen who'd earned every promotion through brilliance instead of birthright. The board, still reeling from Garrett's arrest and the financial scandal breaking in every major publication, agreed. Donovan's lawyers handled the rest. Garrett faced 17 counts of embezzlement and fraud. The trial would take years. The family name was mud. Donovan didn't care. He'd spent 30 years building a legacy in steel and money. Time to build something that mattered. He established the Pierce Foundation with half his personal fortune. Its mission was simple: help families like the Callaways. Single parents working themselves to death, kids slipping through cracks in systems that didn't care, people who needed someone to see them as human instead of statistics. Sienna became the foundation's director of family services. Her salary was triple what she'd made at the diner and the cleaning company combined. More importantly, her work meant something, helped people, changed lives. Felix recovered completely. No more scares. No more midnight fevers. He grew strong and loud and funny, the kind of kid who made everyone around him smile without trying. Iris never stopped drawing. Her pictures covered Donovan's new office walls, a smaller space in a building that didn't scrape the sky but felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. 6 months after his resignation, Donovan stood in a courtroom very different from the boardroom where everything had ended. A family court judge looked over her glasses at him. At Sienna. At Felix and Iris sitting in the front row swinging their legs. "Mr. Pierce," the judge said, "you're 54 years old. Single. You already have substantial financial obligations. Why do you want to adopt these children?" Donovan thought about the rain. About a little girl's desperate voice. About how easy it would have been to walk past. About the man he'd been 6 months ago. Dead inside. Measuring worth in dollars and thinking that was living. "Because they saved my life," he said simply. "I just want the chance to be part of theirs." The judge smiled. "Sign the papers." Made it official. Felix cheered. Iris cried happy tears. Sienna hugged Donovan so hard he couldn't breathe, and he realized breathing had never felt so good. They went to dinner at a restaurant that didn't require reservations or proper attire, where kids could be loud and nobody cared. They went home to a house Donovan had bought in a neighborhood where people knew each other's names. Not a mansion. Just a home, with bedrooms for everyone and a backyard, where Felix could play, and a kitchen table big enough for family dinners. That night, after the kids were asleep, Donovan stood in the living room surrounded by toys and drawings and proof of life happening. He thought about Garrett in prison. About Pierce Industries thriving under new leadership. About the foundation helping its 100th family last week. About second chances and quiet justice and the strange ways the universe balanced scales. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Pierce Industries stock had hit an all-time high. Patricia Chen was being called a visionary. The company Donovan built was succeeding without him. Part of him expected that to hurt. Instead, he felt proud. He'd built something strong enough to survive his absence. That was legacy enough. Felix appeared in the doorway. Blanket dragging behind him. "Can't sleep. Bad dreams?" "No. Good ones. They woke me up." Felix climbed onto the couch beside Donovan. "Are you happy you picked us?" Donovan pulled the boy close, felt small arms wrap around his waist. "Every single day. Even though you lost your big company? I didn't lose anything that mattered." Donovan looked around the room. At the life he'd accidentally found. At the family he'd chosen. "I gained everything." Felix fell asleep against his chest. Donovan sat there holding him, Watching the clock tick past midnight into tomorrow, thinking about all the ways a life could end and begin, about how sometimes the bravest thing wasn't building an empire, it was walking away from one. About how justice didn't always look like courtrooms and handcuffs. Sometimes it looked like this. Quiet. Simple. A child sleeping safe. A family found in rain and kindness. A second chance at being human. Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Inside, Donovan Pierce finally felt warm. If this story touched something in your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to choose love over legacy, people over power, family over fortune. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that remind us what it means to be human. Drop a comment below about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Your words might inspire someone else today. More stories of quiet justice, second chances, and the courage to choose what matters are coming soon. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in the power of hope.